afternoon. I'm so excited. We're coming to you with a great topic. You guys are welcome to tune in, but we're going to be talking about girlhood, womanhood, and we have someone who has studied the topic, and she has been from a feminist to now she's pretty happy just being feminine. So, Justice Kuehl, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And great job with my last name. It doesn't look like Keel, but yep, that's how you say it.
It's good. So you were Miss Tennessee. So first of all, tell me what led you to getting into doing pageantry, because that's a world in its own self.
Yeah, for sure. I started competing later in life. So a lot of people start the whole pageant world when they are kids or in high school and kind of continue on a track until they start getting big titles as an adult. And I did not have the confidence to do that when I was in high school, but I remember having a desire to do it. You watch Miss America growing up and you think, wow, could I do that? And my mom had been a local pageant title holder at her university. So she went to Auburn University and she was Miss Glom. And so I remember Miss Glom, I think it's like the name of their yearbook.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and she had her picture, in our house, and I remember seeing it and thinking, see, maybe I could do that someday. But I was a late bloomer, to say the least. I had braces for a really long time, and so I did not pursue that. And I remember it just kind of was in the back of my mind for years, but my confidence was not there. And when I was probably 21, I was falling asleep one night and I just felt like this whisper, which I think was the Holy Spirit, just like, you can do pageants now. And I thought, wow, could I really do that? And so I wrote it in my phone. And then the next day I woke up and I was like, I can't do that. My confidence was gone again. But it just kept nagging at me. So I started telling people, I'm going to compete. I'm going to compete. And eventually I had to actually put my money where my mouth was and do it. So I found my closest pageant, and I was living in Los Angeles at the time. My family had relocated there from Atlanta. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to compete for Miss Los Angeles County. And after I competed that one time, I did not win because I didn't know what I was doing, but I was hooked. And I connected. Really, what had me hooked was connecting with other women. And for the first time in my life, I was connecting with women who had big dreams like I did. And so I think for so many of us women, when we have big dreams, other women end up shutting that down and kind of saying things that, give the idea like, who do you think you are to dream of something so big? Who do you think you are that you're going to make an impact or do anything important? And instead, I was around women who also wanted to do big things with their lives, who wanted to change the world around them. And that was really encouraging for me. So I competed in California for about 5 years, and then we relocated to Tennessee. And I prayed and I said, Lord, where would you like me to be? Do you want me to stay in California? Do you want me to go to Tennessee with my family? And he said, go win Miss Tennessee. So I thought that was like metaphorical. I didn't know I was actually going to win. So I came to Tennessee, and 3 months later, won Miss Tennessee USA and was preparing to go to Miss USA. So it really was a combination of the Lord speaking to my heart and also just the relationships that I made with other women along the way, and feeling like it was a platform that the Lord could use to help bring a message of being a woman who is whole, who is not afraid to stand for strong traditional values. And even though I wasn't necessarily fully espousing those in my political views at the time, I was living very conservatively personally. And I thought, how cool would it be if we had women who were, striving towards purity and modesty and these things in a position of influence. And so that was really my motivation.
So, how was it that you were a feminist? Because I know you went from feminist to femin. I mean, and I want to talk about the roles of women today,
Yeah.
and the pressure on women today. But when you were a feminist, how did that thinking differ from being a woman who is perfectly happy with her femininity? That
Yeah.
big long word.
Yeah, at the time of being a feminist, I thought that those two things fit together really nicely. That was my idea, was that I want this traditional life, but other women don't, and that's okay. And so I should, be a voice for feminism because feminism gives women choices and says that women can be whoever and whatever they want to be. And I didn't see a lot of the contradiction behind the fact that you can't really have these two things coexisting. Um, but I was college age. I was living in Los Angeles, going to a very liberal university, and I am a very
Where everybody wants to be a star, right?
yes, and I really fell into that as well. And I I was going to this university where you know everyone everyone has very extreme left views on every social matter. So even my version of feminism, which I would say was quite radical, was not radical in the context that I was in. Um, and that's because I remained pro-life in you know throughout this entire time. But every other belief, I was thinking we should have laws in place that require, women to be represented in every industry. Um, I wanted to see more encouragement of women going into STEM fields. All of the regular feminist tropes that you hear. I was like, yes, we need more women represented. We need to make sure women are making the same as men. And I didn't bother to investigate if these claims were real issues that were going on. And so for me, it was really just this deep love for women, which I still have, which is why I can't call myself a feminist anymore. But my deep love for women really motivated me to say, I want to be a feminist. I want to be somebody who's championing women, and I felt that the feminist movement was doing that.
Yeah.
And so it took me a whole process and many years to kind of have the blinders taken off my eyes, and the Lord really used pageants to kind of bring me in and out of that.
Well, and so pageantry is beauty queen. So you have to compete. You have to look beautiful. You have to have the perfect body. You have to have talent. You have to have all that. So that's a world in which, you see all sides of being a woman and the competition. But what you said was that you found community, which is, how does that compare with the competition level that you faced? But also, you found women who were friends. I
Yeah.
mean, you found real people, right?
Yeah. Some of my best friends to this day, some of my close, dear friends are friends that I made through this process. So I would say that the majority of women that I interacted with in pageantry were amazing, down to earth, even if we weren't necessarily similar. They met me with authenticity in their interactions, with kindness. My first pageant, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to do my hair. I didn't know how to do my makeup. I didn't know all the different things. And they just came and surrounded me. And one of them said, "Here's how you tease your hair." And she showed me. And another one said, "You need these shoes." And another one said, "Here's your jewelry." And so they all came around me and really supported me. And that was really my experience throughout most of pageantry. I found that just like in the world outside of pageantry, the number of relationships that were really amazing were probably about equal to what you would find anywhere where there's women. And the number of like toxic encounters I had, I would say there's not more toxic women in pageantry than there are anywhere else. I
Right.
definitely had encounters with women who were backstabbing and gossiping and all of those things that you don't want. But that was not the majority of my interactions at all. And I think that really is more of the fruit of insecurity in women than it is of pageantry.
Right. I tend to agree with that. If the old saying misery loves company is so true. But so let's talk about the pressure on women today,
Mhm.
especially Christian women, because I grew up, my mom worked, raised five kids on her own because she had to. My dad did not take care of his family and his responsibilities. So but I mostly stayed home with my kids because of that. And I had a husband who supported me in that.
Wow.
Um, but I was raised, I was pretty much a tomboy. I lived outside. I mean, I think there's nothing wrong with being a tough, outdoorsy, it's okay to have some, it's not all pageantry, so to speak.
Right.
While there is some of that, there is a lot of pressure for women. Do you work? Do you not work? Do you have kids? Do you not have kids? Do you get married? Do you not get married? And there's a lot of pressure to do that. So what do you say to women today that are confused because society has really blurred the lines of what is even a woman? They're
Yeah.
confused of what does it mean to be free and to be happy and to be a woman who has a purpose from God and all of those things, because a lot of people are just, kind of reaching for whatever comes by and saying, let me try that for a minute.
Yeah. Oh, and I fell into that for a long time, so I can really relate to that. I think what I would say to any woman is the same thing I would say to my younger sisters, which is I really truly believe that God has created every single woman to be a mother. Now, I don't necessarily mean a biological mother, but I think we are all called to spiritual motherhood. And I think that the design of our bodies reflects our spirits, the design of our spirit and the feminine heart of God that we've been given. And so I would say, first of all, develop those skills in yourself, the skills of motherhood, not just practically. Those are great skills to have no matter what, as well, of course, because those translate to the home, but they also translate to the real world. But also those skills of nurturing, of watching out for others, of seeing how you can serve another person, how you can protect them, how you can help them grow into where you see God calling them and where they see God calling them. And so that would be my first thing is wherever you go, if you're doing that, I think that you're in your purpose. And so I think a lot of times we put all this pressure on ourselves, not just as women, but as Christians at large. I've got to like figure out the thing that I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
And the thing that you're supposed to be doing is loving others and loving others in a radical, self-sacrificing way. That is what we are all called to. So as women, that looks like motherhood, sometimes biologically, sometimes spiritually, sometimes both. And so how can that would be the question I would have my sister ask herself, how can I be a mother in whatever it is that I'm doing? I have one sister who's a model. So I would say, how can I be a mother to those that I'm on set with? Or how can I be a mother when I go and speak at an event? How can I take others under my wing and nurture their spirits and see them and help them to experience that love of Jesus that I've been able to experience? How can I help them experience that?
Yeah, and I think that's true because what you're talking about a lot is mentorship. As someone having raised my kids, I have grandkids now, I can mother, and I do this all the time. I can mom. I mean, I'll tell somebody sometime, now I'm finna mama you, and I'll
Yep.
say, I'm gonna give you some mama. I'm gonna give you some mama here. And, but the funny thing is every time I say that, they're like, okay, good. What is it? I want to hear
Yes.
it because I can mama people, and it's just life experience. And
Mhm.
I think that you're from the younger generation. So what is it about the younger generation that you have found that makes it difficult to listen to the older people? Because I know some things, and what I may be able to mentor someone, that's
Mm.
only realistic if I can mama somebody because they let me. But there's
Right.
a lot of, I'm gonna do it my way. Thank you, but no thank you. So
Yes.
what are your thoughts on why it's so hard to speak into younger people's lives because they really don't sometimes want to hear it? Or what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have two main thoughts about that. I think that's such a great question, though. And that I wish more people from your generation were asking that question, because I think that the younger generation so badly needs the wisdom of the previous generations. I mean, we need it so badly. Um, I think one of the first things is if the younger people are not first experiencing extravagant love that feels very unconditional, where they're getting that acceptance and that love, I don't think they're willing to listen to someone that they don't perceive as really, really loving them extravagantly. I've found that people, I'm a millennial and I have younger sisters who are Gen Z. And so their age group, I find that they are so much more willing to listen to advice that I give when I stop and just listen and have compassion in my responses to what I'm hearing from them about what they're going through. And then I just say, I can so relate to that. And here's kind of what I would do if I was you, and then also kind of sandwich it again with, you know, just more compassion. I think a compassion sandwich is really, really great. I think we can kind of go to one extreme or the other where we're all truth or we're all compassion. And I think we need the little sandwich of both. You know, people need that compassion, that unconditional love of Jesus, but they also need the truth. And so if we can bring both of those things, I think people are more willing to listen. And I think another thing is, it kind of goes into this as well, that plays off of this, is asking questions. So
Yeah.
really, really asking them questions. If somebody feels like you really see them and hear them, they're going to be willing to listen because they're going to really believe that you understand. I think when I was younger and I was more resistant to listening to the wisdom of those who had gone before me, it was because I didn't feel like they understood. You don't understand what it feels like to be me. Of course, as you get older, you realize that you kind of feel like the same forever. You kind of feel young forever inside.
Yeah.
And so I think that if you can show someone that you really do understand and you hear them, I think they're so much more willing to listen. Some people are not going to be willing to listen no matter what, but the people who will, I think that's going to be really what is helpful.
Well, I think that's true, and I think that ties back into you know, everybody wants to know their purpose, and everybody wants to know, okay, here's what I'm put on this earth to do. But what about identity? Because you know, it's important to know who we are, but it's equally important to know and accept who we're not. Like, not many people are going to be in pageants and be beauty queens, but that's okay
Yeah.
because that's you. And there actually are quite a few people that, I mean, my friend is Mrs. Louisiana. She's married, had grown kids, and there's a whole thing for people that where women can still pursue that, you
Yeah.
know, into whatever years it is in life. But what was that I was talking about? Well, I was getting ready to make a point. Oh, where was I going with that?
I know my mom, I was like, I was tracking with you too. My mom brain is like, oh, it's gone.
Oh, identity. That's what it was.
Yes,
So
I did.
sense of identity. And so I think because of social media and because of phones and things like that, people are trying to be a whole lot, a little, I mean, a little bit of everything. So how do you say you've got your sisters and the people that are on your platform? How do you get people to tune into, okay, I don't have to be everything to everyone, but here's how I rule those things out. So I'm not trying to be everything to everyone.
Yeah. I honestly feel like there is no way around the process that just you go through naturally kind of in your 20s. Because I've thought about this a lot with myself. How could I have avoided wasting a lot of time and energy on the things that are not who I am? And you know, it really is a process. I think the ultimate answer really is just continuing to pursue your identity in the Lord. And for those listening, that can sound like you can hear it. We hear that so much in Christianity, but what does that actually mean to really pursue our identity in the Lord? And I think it's really it's going after that personal relationship with Him. It's getting rid of performative parts of your relationship with the Lord and letting it be real and raw. So going to Him exactly how you are. I think a lot of times for my personality, I want to go to Him once I have perfected myself. And so I want to be like, okay, I know I have this struggle, so I'm going to get rid of that before I go to Him because I know what He's going to tell me. He's going to tell me you got to get rid of that. But so often when I just give up and I'm just desperate and I'm like, oh, Lord, I'm so ashamed that I'm still dealing with this. And I go to Him and I'm just met with His love. And that ends up being the key to overcoming whatever it is that I'm struggling with, because He meets us with His love every time. And those experiences have been what have helped me realize, oh, you know what? I was doing that thing because I felt like I needed to prove myself. And that's a huge thing that I talk about in my book, Feminist to Feminine, is that I felt this burden to prove myself for years. I felt like I had to prove not just myself, but also that all women, that we are capable of doing anything a man can do. And when you really understand God's love for you, and when you understand the beauty of his design in us as women, I mean, we were not created on accident. Our femininity is not an accident. It is not a weakness. Our emotions are not an accident. They can be used as a weakness, but they were not created as weakness. When we realize that all of these things are intentional gifts from a loving Father, I think naturally those things that distract us start to fade away because we go, actually, I kind of know what I'm about now. And that's really been the key for me because I was in the rat race for a long time. I've got to be a girl boss and I want to be super successful. And then I realized that what success really means is being where God has you in that season, and kind of like you said, shutting out the peripheral distractions. He doesn't have me, like right now, he doesn't have me in pageants. He doesn't have me doing politics. He has me being a mom right now. And so it looks like me continually, okay, I have these other things coming up, but I know this is where God has me right now. And so I'm going to continue to surrender them to him because I know I can trust that he knows exactly what I need to do with my life in order to accomplish what he wants me to accomplish.
Well, and how do you recognize when you're pushing and you're striving and it's for the wrong reasons? Because regardless of what makes us go and makes us, really want to be successful and be the girl boss, those are all good things,
Yeah.
right? But, it's not all God things. So how do
Yeah.
you help people say, okay, what are my motivations and are they right? In 5 years, am I still going to be working towards this and on this? Or is this just people pleasing or just trying to keep
Yeah.
up with the Joneses or just trying to get more likes or things like that? I mean, those are
Yeah.
all really good questions. So how do you get to the real motivation of where your action should come from so that you really are being who you're created to be and you really are doing what you're supposed to be doing?
Yeah. I think a big red flag for me personally is, am I feeling anxious about this? Because
Yeah.
when I'm feeling anxious, I know that I'm doing something outside of God's grace. His grace is not on me in that moment. And so that doesn't necessarily mean you're doing the wrong thing, but it could mean that um, you're not doing it with the Lord. So that's a big red flag because you want to do things with him. Um, and so I think that would be like a primary thing. If you feel anxious in what you're doing and you're not feeling like God's grace on it, it might not be the spot that he has you, or it might not be the reason that he has you in that spot. There have been times that the Lord has spoken to me really clearly. And, I think for each person that looks differently, but where he's spoken to me really clearly, I want you to, he spoke to me about the university that I went to. And that was a big step of faith for me because I did not believe that I could get into this university. I did not believe that I had what it took. I didn't have the finances for it. I didn't have any of it. And so I just obeyed that next step, and he gave me peace every step of the way. And peace doesn't necessarily mean you're in God's will either, but when he's speaking to you and there's that combination of things, I think that's a really good green flag. And I ended up getting into the university. I got a scholarship. I ended up having everything fall into place.
But you had to take that step out, a leap of faith first.
Yes, and so I know he was on every step of it. And this is kind of where I was going with this. I don't use that degree at all. My degree is in fashion. I didn't use it for one day after I finished college. And I
Except for
know,
you clothes.
yeah, except for that. If I have a stain in my shirt, I know how to get it out from my fabric science class, so that's helpful. But
That's
I
helpful.
know, I know that he spoke to me to do that. And so there's things that are a mystery. There are things where it really, you go, okay, God, I didn't understand that one. And then there's some things that are really, really clear. Now, the skills that I learned through that process have absolutely played into the rest of my life. The ability to problem solve and all of those things I use every single day of my life, but not my degree. And so for whatever reason, that was the path God wanted me to take. And so there's things like that where there's a bit of mystery to it. And God's peace was on it, and it didn't even necessarily make sense. And so there might be situations like that where God's calling you to do something that just doesn't make sense to you, or to sacrifice something on your career path that doesn't make sense to you. But he always comes back around. And even if we get it wrong, even
Right.
if we,
Which we will.
we absolutely will. Yes.
Will.
Because none of us, perceives God's voice perfectly clearly and all those things.
Right.
But he says that he causes all things to work together for those who are in Christ Jesus and called according to his word. So if you're living a life where you're pursuing the Lord and you are seeking to surrender to him, he is going to keep rerouting that GPS until you get to the place where he wants you to be.
Yeah.
And so I think resting in that helps a lot with not feeling the rat race, kind of like, I've got to do this, and
Right.
I've got to make this happen, and I've got to accomplish things,
Yeah.
that sort of energy.
So in your book, you talk about your story from feminist to feminine. So if someone is struggling with, okay, I really don't know what I'm supposed to do. I'm unsure of my role as a woman. I really don't know how to interpret, should I, career-minded, mother-minded, mentoring others. What are they going to find in your book that helps them discern perhaps maybe some next steps?
Yeah. So a couple of things I think would be helpful in my book. One of the things that is my favorite part of the book is that it is a journaling book. So there are journaling prompts, really thorough journaling prompts all throughout. So you could really spend your time going through the book if you wanted to. And I think journaling prompts are such a great way for us to figure out where our hearts are and also to invite the Lord into the process. I always journal with the Lord. So I will most of the time address my journal to the Lord and just ask him to speak to me through the journaling. And so I think those journaling prompts are really helpful for that. Mm-hmm. And another thing is remembering that no matter where you're going, whether you go into a career, whether you go into motherhood, whatever path the Lord has for you, the goals are still the same. So even if you go into a career, like your number one calling is still not that career, if you will. Your number one calling is to be like a conduit of God's love, and a voice of his truth in that area. And so if we focus on growing our relationship with the Lord, growing our character, becoming women who really are masterful at being spiritual mothers, then wherever we go, those skills are going to transfer. And so nothing is wasted. Because I think it can be hard when you feel like it was difficult for me. I spent all these years working on this career, and now I'm totally pivoting and doing a 180 into motherhood. And it feels very difficult because, last year, what success looked like for me was, achieving X, Y, and Z. And now what success looks like for me is cleaning toilets and changing diapers. And so for me, even having this mindset already, it still was difficult. But I had to remember, no matter what, when I was, having a job outside of the home or being inside the home, both of those times, my mission is the same. And that is being a conduit of God's love, being a conduit of his truth, and getting to help show his face to whatever people I'm around, whether that's out there or in the home with my son and my husband.
So, and let's just end on the topic of fulfillment, because I know you talk about that in your book too. So many people aren't happy. Yes. And they're running and chasing after, the grass that's greener across the other side or wherever. Mm-hmm. How much of it is just mindset and choice of attitude?
Probably a lot. This is something I struggle with too. And I think it is a continual process of surrendering that and just saying, okay, God, it is so hard because the messaging that I'm constantly getting from the media, from music, from movies, is that I should keep striving outward. And that if I don't keep striving outward, I'm not going to have this elusive happiness. And when I realized that God has given me everything that I need for joy and contentment right now, that is so reassuring. And so I just have to remind myself of the truth. And it's really challenging. Like, I don't want to just make this sound like, oh, it's so easy. It is really, really challenging when we're bombarded by a different message all the time that you need to buy this thing or look this way or go on this trip in order to have joy and contentment. You have everything that you need for joy and contentment right now. And that's always reassuring to me because it takes the pressure off of me. Oh, God isn't waiting for me to like go do something amazing, by the world standards in order for me to have his joy and his contentment. And so I think we just have to continually remind ourselves of that. And it's hard, but it's so worth it.
And choose to be thankful in those moments,
Yeah.
because we can grumble or we can be grateful.
Yeah.
Either, we always have the choice of which one of those we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's always something to be unhappy about. There's always something to complain about. There's never, ever going to be a time when all is right and well in any world. But you can step back and say, okay, I'm going to choose to be grateful, and I'm going to thank God for my health. I'm going to thank God for, there's so many things we can be grateful for. And I do think that attitude, I mean, I know for me personally, when I'm in a really bad mood and I'm like, okay, thank you, Lord, for, and I go through, it changes everything. It changes my perspective because I have adjusted my will to quit grumbling and get grateful. And I think in your book, you talk about that because you talk about the fulfillment and the happiness that we pursue. It's in the things most of the time we already have.
Yeah, yeah. And I think David is a great example of this because he didn't suppress his emotions. So I'm not a fan of, I think sometimes growing up, I got the message that I need to suppress my emotions in order to have a good attitude and have gratefulness. David worked through those negative emotions. He felt them, but it's coming
and he
back.
wasn't scared to tell God about it.
No. And so,
Lord,
yeah.
I am down. I am in a pit today, Lord.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah. And so I think that's such a helpful thing, again, journaling is a great way to do this, or if you want to do it verbally, but just going to the Lord and saying, Lord, I am angry right now. I am angry. I'm angry that I'm changing diapers and my friend is on an amazing trip to Italy. And I wish I was on an amazing trip to Italy. And then, just processing through that with the Lord and then coming back to gratefulness. Oh, Lord, thank you. Because I prayed for this baby. I prayed for this baby for 10 years and I have this amazing child now. And so I think following the model of David in the Psalms is such a great way to process through those negative emotions, but come back to the positive.
Yeah. Well, we could talk all day, but we won't because no one would watch. But your book is From Feminist to Feminine, and it is available on your website, which I have got scrolling down at the bottom. I forgot to turn that on earlier. But it's also on Amazon. It's just everywhere. And in there, you talk to women about being women. And it's okay to pursue who you are.
Yeah.
And get with God on what his plan is for your life. And I think that ultimately is the perfect pursuit of purpose.
Yeah, for sure.
So thank you so much, Justice, for coming on. Thank you so much for tackling a tough topic, especially at your age. It's very encouraging to see you out there encouraging other women to be all they can be, but not to try to, be too much and wear themselves out. Let God have a say in the matter. And that's ultimately a great message.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was a great talk.
Okay, great. We'll do this again.
Sounds great.
Okay. Have a great day.
Thank you.